there has been a lot of news that has gone on last week between some recruits coming in, between NFL draft, even some show cause nothing burgers that Rob referred to. So we'll get to some of that
Trademark.
here. Let's start with the tweets of the week, though, and we're going to start with we have a couple big commitments here: Ochaun Mathis and Devin Drew. So Mathis is from TCU, Drew is from Texas Tech, and they both made their announcements here over the course of the last week. So they have increased the depth now on the defensive line. Just to give, I guess, some additional roster management news since we last met as a foursome here. Damian Jackson, Casey Rogers, Latrell Novell, they've entered the transfer portal. Tate Wildeman, he's quitting football. And so, yeah, this is really – what's that?
Chris Walker.
Yeah, Walker. See, I thought Walker was gone like a year ago. So this is where it gets kind of weird with the numbers. And I wouldn't get overly worried right now, Redcasters, one way or another. But the last I see here, and I've got the whole printout of it, we were at 88 players on this, and I see 4 of them that I know are gone that I just mentioned. There's probably a couple more. We're somewhere maybe in the 82 to 84 range, and then we started adding numbers again by adding Mathis and Drew. For the life of me, I don't know what our exact number is right now, and all I can say is it's going to be okay. We'll be at 85 one way or the other when it gets to fall. So I'm kind of giving up on trying to exactly figure out where we're at right now. I don't think it really matters. But that at least is the update on who's come and gone here just over the course of the last couple of weeks.
And heck, you pay a guy enough NIL money, they can pay their own ride. So, yeah, it's not even an issue anymore.
Exactly.
One of the things I think that was interesting, and this was a tweet that came from Arbitrary Analytics, and it has to do with Texas. Since we got Mathis over Texas, and he's from Austin, it says the Huskers have struggled against Texas head-to-head in football over the past 20 years. Signing Ochaun Mathis was a good win for NU. The rivalry between Nebraska and Texas reached its breaking point in 2009. How have the two programs fared since that game? And here we have this graph that shows this table that shows where they are at. And if you look at Nebraska and Texas since 2009, it's stunningly similar from average points scored. We scored 30.2. Texas has scored 30.6. Points against, we've had 26.2, 26.7 for Texas. But wins and losses, we won 82. They've won 83. We both lost 68 games. It's unbelievable. Draft picks, we've had 35. They've had 37. The big difference is in the recruiting summary. And they've had 17 5-star recruits. We've had 0. They've had 158 4-star recruits. We've had 72. And you look at that, and I'll even go into what Pick 6 Previews showed here. Pick 6 Previews had a thing about the draft and how Texas is number 1 in revenue and top 5 recruiter, and they had 0 draft picks. And the other thing, the other tweet here, they talked about how the Dakota Big 3 schools, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, North Dakota, they had the same amount of draft picks as Florida's Big 3, Florida State, Miami. But anyways, I'll kind of get off the tweets of the week here. Maybe we'll stop and have a little discussion on this. But first off, Texas, let's talk about that. How close we've been with them over the last 13 years since leaving the conference. And yet really the lack of success that both programs have had. And then now Texas, having 0 draft picks. Dave, I'll start with you. I mean, your thoughts on all that as you see that.
Yeah. I'll give, Rob credit for bringing this up every opportunity he can that, Nebraska and Texas have very similar win-loss records over the last decade or so. So I'm sure he'll hammer that point home. What was interesting to me on that graphic was with the recruiting. I think Texas had 285 recruits. I guess that would mean scholarships that were given out in that time period, I presume, to our 273. And so, Boomer, I don't know how the math works on this, but does that imply that they've actually had more roster turnover? Because if everybody, had the exact amount of scholarships and everybody went through their full career at one school, and you'd have very similar numbers, obviously. And Texas actually has had 12 more scholarship players over the same time period. Does that mean actually they had more turnover on their roster than us?
That would be my guess without, having a deep dive into the numbers and looking at it. But yeah. if you're offering more scholarships, that would seem to be the to the case. He just had a bigger turnover and had to replace them with others at various times. And
I think that's intriguing.
unless there's some sort of limitations I've forgotten about during that stretch, but I don't think we did. So
we talk so much about how many people have left Nebraska over, especially in the Riley and early Frost years and all this turnover. But there's Texas having the exact same number. In fact, even more turnover than us. I thought that was interesting.
How many coaches have they gone through during that same time frame?
Well, it would have been Mac Brown, Charlie Strong, Herman, and now Sarkeesian. So
4
since 09, so before.
And we had Bo to Riley, and I guess we've only had 3.
Three, yeah.
But yeah, I just thought that was interesting there. And I guess maybe the second one that Brett with Pick Six said was the Dakotas and Miami and Florida State having the exact same number of recruits or draft picks coming out of those 3 Dakota schools as the big 3 in Florida. It just seems bizarre.
I mean, in fairness, the Dakota schools are drawing off 2 state populations, so I mean they've got that natural advantage over Florida.
I was listening to one of the radio shows there this week. I think it might have been Mike Schaefer talking about this, but and actually I just saw it on Twitter today. Like Vanderbilt was in town, right? I mean, like the Vanderbilt coaches were in. 2 of them were in Omaha. Mm-hmm. Stanford has been coming into town apparently a lot. You're seeing lot of recruiting. Yeah, 2 very smart schools that need to have a wide recruiting net. To your point there, Rob. But there's a lot of attention being thrown onto Nebraska recruiting here, and it seems like there's been a course correction. I don't want to claim this is my own original thought. This was Schaefer's thought, I guess, was that there seems to be a course correction from the Rivals and 24/7 guys, et cetera, on how you're grading these guys, because you look at the Wisconsins and Iowas and Minnesotas of the world, especially when it comes to D linemen and offensive linemen, grabbing 2-star guys and end up being, essentially all Americans that are drafted high in the NFL draft. And they're like, wait a second, we're just missing these guys. So it seems like there's some more attention from the recruiting services, and then also from just coaches in general saying, hey, there's a lot of talent there that we are not mining. And now you can go to the Midwest and maybe hit Kansas City, Omaha, Des Moines, and Sioux Falls in 2 days and actually get 8 or 10 recruits to talk to you. It's not just a one-off thing, right? And there's just a lot of activity. I mean, we see Oklahoma State taking a quarterback from Nebraska, for goodness sake. So
I think it's one of those things where that was my argument for so many years, was that the talent was here, but if it's not identified and people aren't coming to see it, then it just gets missed. It's not just that all of a sudden Frost has just walked into a really talented Nebraska all of a sudden. What happens is, and I mean, you can look at the in-state recruiting stats here, and you'll see some of the same schools. There's 2 Bellevue West kids in 2024. And obviously we've gotten a number of Bellevue West kids now out, from the last few years, and other schools have come in. And when coaches come in and college coaches come in, talk to high school coaches, and they're talking about some senior in a class, by all means, that high school coach is going to say, oh yeah, well, I also have a junior. And then here, take a look at this sophomore. And we've got this up and coming freshman, and you build these relationships. When coaching staffs go years without coming here, those relationships aren't built, and kids get missed. But the talent's been here, and I'm glad it's being noticed. I know that this staff is going after the guys that we have here as hard as anybody, and I think we're going to get our fair share of them. And we had a great discussion on that last week with Damon Benning on Monday night. And I encourage all Redcasters, go back to our YouTube page, and we have we're segmenting out some of these videos now, so you can watch the whole episode if you like, but you can also just watch 20-minute segments here and there. And we have one that's a recruiting episode, the recruiting segment with Benning, and we talk about that. We talk about the in-state and how important that is, and what the philosophy is, and there's a lot of positives that are going on there. But and Dave, you mentioned that the Vanderbilt guy. Benning had mentioned something about this. I don't know if it was with us but that I think a guy that was coaching with South Dakota State at one point and had been a thorn in our side, bringing in guys that would have been like walk-ons at Nebraska, and he was getting them to come up there. Well, he's taking a job at Vanderbilt. And so I saw something today that a player from West Side has committed. So,
really? Because I know they're recruiting Caleb Benning.
It wasn't Benning, but it was somebody. And I didn't get a chance to look too deep into it, but it looked like somebody from West Side, I think, had committed today too.
Wow.
to Vanderbilt. So, I mean, look, that just, if that's the case, and I guess I'll have to double check this, or if somebody wants to look that up while we're doing this. If that's the case, then that's a ninth in-state kid going Power 5 or having a Power 5 offer. Because as we look at these in-state ones, we've gone over this list, but here's the 7 that Nebraska has offered. 3 of them have committed. To your point, Dave, the quarterback from Gretna, Flores, he's committed to Oklahoma State. So there's number 8. And, if some kid's going to Vanderbilt, there's number 9. So
yeah,
it's just one of those things. I mean, there's talent here, and I am genuinely glad. We're not going to get every one of them. We never have. That's revisionist history. Maybe we can talk with Osborne about that on Monday.
Sure.
I'm sure he wishes he had a Larry Station or some of those guys. Gosh, who was the Lincoln Southeast kid that was a 94 the year before? Ty Good.
Ty Good went
to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Ty
Good.
And Creighton Prep had a guy go to Notre Dame. That's named Tim Ritter. There you go.
Yep.
So Caleb is Damon's son, right?
Yes.
Is that
as far as I know? Yes.
If he goes to a different school that's not Nebraska, I just want to be clear. He didn't even go to his dad's high school when his dad was coaching at a school.
Yep,
so
that's right.
I just don't want Husker fans to freak out because we're not getting a legacy kid out of that, because this kid's
we'll freak out, Rob. Don't worry.
No, well, trust me. Apparently you've never been on Husker Twitter before, Dave. So
I try to avoid
these guys will freak out because, oh God, there's another legacy kid that won't come to the school. That kid that won't even go to the school his dad was coaching at. So
I'm still rooting for Caleb to come to Nebraska.
And he's a sophomore. So I mean, he could switch schools 9 times between now and then.
Let's